All right, welcome to day 7 of the 7 days of land flipping. You made it. You're not the last session. Now again, if you haven't watched the first 6 sessions, make sure you click on the link right here. It brings you right back because they all build on top of each other. In today's session, we're talking about how to do these deals with using zero of your money and also how to create cash flow from land. This is actually the most exciting of those 7 sessions because how would you like to do 50, 100 deals this year without putting $1 down on any one of your deals? That's what we're going to cover right now. All right, so you got a deal, you got a buyer. Let's say you have it under contract for $20,000 and you have a buyer for $50,000. So how do you close on that deal without using your own money? Well, there's multiple ways that you can do that. First way is you do what's called a classic wholesale. Now in a classic wholesale, you use what's called an assignment. So it's a piece of paper that is the contract between the seller and you, gives you the right to assign your rights in that contract to somebody else. So in other words, let's say this property is worth $85,000. You got it on a contract for $20,000 and you're selling it for $50,000 now. So very simply what you could do is simply go to the buyer and say, hey, Mr. Buyer, this is actually a situation where I have this deal under contract. I can just assign my contract over to you. How about you just pay me a $30,000 assignment fee? The buyer says yes. So you now basically sign an assignment agreement. You give both the assignment agreement and the assignment to the title company. And the title company now closes the deal between the seller and the buyer. You step out of the transaction. You're no longer part of that transaction, but because you sold your rights in that transaction for $30,000. So now in closing, what happens is the buyer now wires in $50,000 plus closing costs. So it's say somewhere around $52,000. The buyer wires in $52,000. The title company of that $52,000 now takes $20,000, sends it to the seller. The title company takes $2,000, keeps it for themselves for their efforts, and sends $30,000 over to you. You just did a land flip without even buying the property. By just assigning the document that you had, the contract between the seller and you, assigning that to a buyer, you just made $30,000. How cool is that? Now there's a second way. Sometimes in some states, the title companies don't want you to do assignments. They don't allow assignments, or even though they're legal in all 50 states, you might not have luck in finding a title company to do that. So the title company might say, you know what? We can do this, but you have to buy the property first. You can do what's also called a double closing. You have a contract with the seller for $20,000. Seller agrees to sell the property to you for $20,000. You now market the property, you find the buyer. And what you tell the buyer is very simply, yeah, I'll sell it to you for $50,000. So you sign a second agreement between you and the buyer. So now you take both of those agreements and send them to the title company and instruct the title company to do what's called a double closing. So the title company now will open 2 escrow transactions. The money flows such that the buyer again sends in $50,000 plus, let's say $2,000 in closing costs. The buyer's money paid for everything involved, with the difference only that the buyer never found out that you made $30,000 on the deal because you bought it for $20,000, you owned it for $20,000, and then 5 minutes later you sold it for $50,000, so you make $30,000 on that deal, but the money all came from the buyer. That's the definition of a double closing. Now you might think like, I've never heard about this, something like that, or you might be thinking, yeah, cool, I've been doing them all along. 90% of our students that in our coaching program that do land flips use double closings every single day and week of the year. But there's a third way that you can also do it, and that is what's called transactional funding. So occasionally you come across a state or an area and you just can't find a title company that's willing to do a double closing where you use the buyer's money to pay for everyone involved. Well, in that case, they might just say, you know what, we're gonna do a double closing, but you need to bring in your own money to buy that deal. But what if you don't have $20,000 in your checking account? Well, coming in is a lender that is called Transactional Funding Lender. A transactional funder does exactly that. They will provide you a loan for $20,000 for 2 days. They verify that the buyer already sent in the $50,000, and then they say, okay, great, I'm gonna lend you $20,000. So they're gonna lend you the $20,000, and they sent that $20,000 into the title company. Now the title company now of that sends $20,000 to the seller, $22,000 to the lender, and the remaining $28,000 go to you. Now, and sometimes the question we always get is like, Jack, if you do seller financing, can you do double closings? Yes. Remember what seller financing is. When we do seller financing, what we do is instead of selling a property for cash, we actually allow the buyer to buy that property by putting it on a down payment and then making a monthly payment after that. If you have this property, it's worth $50,000, you have it on a contract for $10,000. If you now market it for $50,000 and somebody comes and says, yes, I want to buy it, I give you 20% down. What is 20% of $50,000? It is also $10,000. So basically somebody is willing to give you $10,000 down payment on a property that you have on a contract for $10,000. So again, you can do that same double closing right here. You can use the $10,000 from the buyer, use it to send it to the seller, and now you've just bought a property. How much money do you have in the deal? Zero. And then now, for the next 15 years, you receive $500 a month. That's $6,000 a year. Now, $6,000 a year over 15 years is $90,000. I just showed you a way how you can make $90,000 over the next 15 years in monthly payments without having a dollar in the deal. That's an infinite return on investment. All right, so this concludes our 7-part series. Now, go out there, do those deals, get those lists, get those counties, send those letters out. Now, if you want some guidance for that, if you want some help doing this, if you want to collapse time, if you want to do what our students doing and getting 45, 50 deals under contract, in some cases in the first 3 to 6 months, then what you want to do is you want to go to www.landcoaching.com and book a call with one of our team members and see if we are a good fit to help you to the next level. But in the meantime, there's much more coming. Make sure you subscribe. All right, with that said, see you in the next video.